My name is Agnes Strzok. I'm the office manager here at USKO Realty, and I want to thank everyone for joining this business networking event. And if you haven't had a chance yet, please do go grab food on the other side right there. I'm excited to introduce our guest speakers today. Today we're going to have engineer Serge Kissel from Tangent Design. He'll be the main speaker. Following him will be Dan Klemensky from Loan City Mortgage, talking about how to get a construction loan. And then Scapi, a cabinet company, will also do a little introduction. All right, let's take a moment to thank our sponsors for this event. It was Loan City Mortgage and Scapi. Thank you so much. Alrighty, everyone, let's get ready. Serge Kissel can come up. We will start the presentation.
I think you guys will be able to hear me without a microphone, right? Yeah. Awesome. I'll just do it without a mic. How's everybody doing this morning?
Pretty good.
Good. Fantastic. I'm just going to do some screen mirroring right here. So a little bit about myself. My name is Serge Kissel. I got an engineering degree from Sacramento State in civil engineering back in 2008, and time flew by so fast. The first 7 years of my experience was in heavy civil industry, primarily bridge construction. While doing that, I witnessed the crash, the real estate crash that happened and started in 2006, really hit in 2008. On the back end of that, during that crash, I bought a house, but on the back end of that, I was looking for my second house, starting in 2011. And when I looked around, I realized other people were buying homes that I was trying to buy. And what they were doing is they were doing quick fixes and flipping them. And so I kind of looked around and I said, I could probably do this as well. And so I bought my first house that I would flip with a partner of mine. He came up with the funds for the purchase. It's silly because I remember I bought this house for $131,000, right? That's unreal these days. And it wasn't even in the bad areas, in the 95821 zip code. And so I remember going through this process, and it took us 4.5 months to remodel this house. And I remember bringing in 6 different plumbers to give me a bid that was really, at the end of the day, $600. So learned a lot along the way, sold this house, had a certain amount of money that I wanted to make. When I made 3 times that amount, I'm like, all right, bought the next house through an off-market deal, and instead of remodeling it in 4.5 months, I did it in 6 weeks. And that kind of started my entry into the business. And eventually in 2014, I decided to get into new construction, bought my first couple lots doing that, and decided to walk away from my day job at the end of 2014. Now I got full-time into building mainly infill spec homes. As I was doing that, I realized that I had some limitations with getting my plans done and pushing them through. And so I said, hey, how about I start doing this for myself? And that's how we started Tangent Design and Engineering. Originally, it was just an idea of doing in-house plans for ourselves and going through our permitting process. That eventually became more of a client-facing business. And since then, kind of continued in various roles and aspects of the industry, kind of growing in the residential construction industry, spec home construction, and small multifamily projects. And everything you're going to hear today is just a small snippet of what I've learned along the way, and I'll have an opportunity for you to ask some questions at the end. So the first thing you do before you buy a house is you have to consider land. And actually I'm going to spend more time on this because I feel like this is the area where people are least educated about, because not all land is equal. And how many of you guys have ever bought a piece of property for new home construction? You guys, just a show of hands. Here, there's a handful of people. You guys will agree with me. You will understand that land can be confusing. Number one, you must know that we're not running out of land anytime soon. I remember when I got in the industry and you'd come across a lot that seemed really amazing and fantastic, and you get this desperation about it because you're like, how many more vacant parcels are there in Carmichael? And you think that there's maybe like another 5 or 10, and there's hundreds and hundreds of parcels, and they're all over the place. And every time you think you found the perfect lot, you wait some time, you're gonna find another perfect lot. There's no such thing as like, oh, a lot with the view that I'll never find a similar lot again. You will. So just to give you guys perspective, whatever you come across, don't feel like that's the only thing out there. There's plenty of land, and there's going to be plenty of land to build for a long time. The first thing that you need to consider when you look at any kind of parcel is utilities. So, does it have a sewer tap? If you're in a area that is serviced by public sewer, you should ask that question. Where are you? Are you in the county? Are you in city limits? Are you out in the country in El Dorado or Placer County away? You're probably not going to have public sewer. But you got to ask this question. And I'll explain why. Number one, a sewer tap could be very expensive. If the public sewer is right in front of your property, I don't know, maybe the costs are 15 or 20 grand plus whatever fees you have to pay. The fees can vary drastically. In Cameron Park, they can be $40,000. In Sacramento County, they can be $11,000 to $13,000. So massive things. So you'll see sometimes lots on the market, and you'll wonder why this lot's being sold for 100 grand, and another lot is being sold for 200,000. $100,000 piece of property is not necessarily cheaper, and because utilities are a really huge deal. I was in contract on a property last year, I want to say, or earlier this year. That was a pretty good deal. But after doing a little bit of research, I realized that this property would need a sewer service. The problem was the sewer main was about 300 feet away. Not only would I would need to tap into the sewer, I'd need to extend the sewer main 300 feet. That would cost me over $100,000. It instantly made this deal not make sense. Other thing you want to consider is water. Now, dealing with water is a little cheaper, but water fees tend to be more expensive. So if your property doesn't have a water meter, I mean, in Placer County, if you're sitting on over an acre, your water meter is going to cost you $50-something thousand plus a few $1,000s to actually do the tap and install the meter. So this could get expensive. And again, not every property is equal. It's to consider. Next thing is electricity. Where is the power? Do you have access to power? Is the power, especially if you're in the country, like this in the city is usually common sense, electricity somewhere nearby, you're in a developed neighborhood. If you're in an HOA or subdivision, it's probably stubbed out to the front of your property. But once you get in rural areas, is it on your property? Do you need to procure an easement to get to it? How much wire are you gonna need to run? So to give you an idea, I don't know where the prices of copper are these days, but a 600-foot run to a house of power with conduit, stuff like that, costs you $40,000, $50,000. So things to consider where you're at. And if you get out in the country, percolation, testing well, percolation's for septic. Does your property perk? Just try to perk a 2.5 acre property in Auburn, 11 test sites, 10 of them didn't perk. You need at least 3. You'd think on 2.5 acres you'd find a place where you could put in a septic tank. You can't. That property's not buildable. It's worthless other than for, camping on it every once in a while. Testing, well, increasingly, especially if you get into foothill areas, you cannot get good producing wells. Sometimes you'll even get contaminated wells. I've drilled a dry well before that's 1,000 feet deep. So it's not guaranteed. All of these things you might want to figure out before you buy a property. I would never buy a property and put hundreds of $1,000s into a property until I know it perks and is approved for some sort of septic or has a working well that is at least a gallon and change per minute so you could finance. So these are probably the most important things. After that, improvements. Especially in places like Sacramento County, improvements on any kind of lot are almost guaranteed if it's not in a subdivision. What are improvements? Curb, gutter, sidewalk, paving a road, different jurisdictions, but especially when you get into urban kind of / suburban areas that are developed, improvements are required. They will quickly make a lot not worth the buy. Because as you realize, there's several aspects to improvements. The time it takes to get your plans through, designed, submitted, approved, it's a headache, it costs money. The second headache is the actual cost of improvements. If you've got to widen the road, so there's things that you see, like curb, gutter, sidewalk, but there's things that you don't see. I've had to install improvements, and as I'm building the curb, gutter, and sidewalk, and going through the design process, they come to a realization that there's a water main underneath this curb, gutter, and sidewalk that needs to be moved, because a water main can't be within 3 feet of this curb, gutter, and sidewalk. And so moving a water main is expensive. 150 feet of water main with all the taps that we had to redo and everything else was roughly a $40,000 cost. Something to consider, something to ask. Every time you're looking at a lot, go to the city, go to the county, go to the jurisdiction, find out if you'll need to improve that lot in order to build it. HOAs. Not all HOAs are equal. Some HOAs do not care about anything, but some HOAs are really, really particular, and they are gonna really determine what you're gonna build there. So you might have a dream, you might be thinking, this is what I'm gonna do here, this is my plans, my ideas. You're gonna get into that HOA. Not only are you gonna spend a long time figuring out how to get through that HOA approval process, but what you're gonna build is gonna be heavily dictated by them. So just give you a few examples. You get into some very high-end HOAs, the process of approval is going to be really complicated. Probably not many of you guys are going to build in places like Truckee, but there's a few high-end HOAs in Truckee where the approval process for your HOA before you ever submit to the actual county is 3 to 4 years. Okay. You probably should hire somebody who's worked with that HOA to design your plans, because it's going to take you 7 to 8 years. You're probably going to give up and sell that lot before you ever build there. Locally here, work with people on the design side who've worked with that HOA before. Everybody has to learn somewhere, but you probably don't want them to learn on your project. So keep in mind, find out how complicated, how difficult. Also, your construction costs in every HOA will go up, because the design features they'll require, because of the landscaping requirements they'll have, because of just like, hey, the requirement to always keep a dumpster on site and keep your site clean. Those are just increased costs. I would say, depending on the HOA, your costs of building inside an HOA are going to go up anywhere between 10 and 30%. 30% being like high-end, think Montserrat in Loomis. Maybe 20% is think Winchester or Serrano, but your costs for construction are definitely going to go up. City architectural guidelines. What people forget is some cities make you go, there's no HOA, but El Dorado has a community planning district that's going to tell you this is what they want or don't want. Some historic districts, there's areas in Rockland, anything building in Sacramento, city of Sacramento, and the closer you get to downtown, there's historic limitations, there's height limitations. Like I just had a project in downtown Sacramento where it's considered the Newton Booth Historic District, and you have to max build a building that's 150% of the height of your adjacent building plate height. So with the raised foundation, the adjacent buildings were like 10.5 feet. So I could only build a building that's roughly 16 feet high to plate height. So to get 2 stories in, I had to like do these vault ceilings and goofy things to make it work, because otherwise you might see a 3-story building across the street, but that got approved 6 years ago before they started enforcing the historical code in that area. So don't assume just by looking around. There's guidelines everywhere. They slow you down, but they also dictate what you get to build. And then the jurisdiction. It'll take you a year to get a plan approved in Davis or West Sacramento, and probably 2 months in Placer County, right? Or you could probably get a plan approved in 4 to 5 weeks in Sacramento County when they're not busy like right now. But not all jurisdictions are created equal. There's a reason why there's a reason why your set of plans cost a lot more to do in the city of Davis, or if you go out in the Bay Area and some of those jurisdictions, it's just a lot of work. They are gonna nitpick your plans. They have a bunch of random rules that they arbitrarily enforce, and that plays a huge role in what to consider. A few more things: easements. Make sure you get your preliminary title report. You have easements running through your property, especially when you get out into the country in random areas, but also in the county and in urban areas. You'll have easements and things you have to consider, and setbacks, utility easements. They might really limit drainage easements, limit what you think you can build. So you'll look at the property and you'll be like, oh, it's a fantastic, beautiful property. Well, what you might not be aware of, it's got a PG&E easement that crisscrosses the property diagonally. And the area where you thought you were gonna put the house is not gonna be the area where you put the house. So look at that. The other thing is, make sure you have easements to access your property. If you don't have easements to access, and even that's not guaranteed. You might have crazy neighbors that will fight you on a legal easement that you have to access your property. Make sure you have easements to power. If the power is not on your property, like PG&E is going to require an easement, recorded easement with your neighbor's permission to bring power over. If your neighbor just wants to give you a hard time or harass you, they will. I've had to bribe neighbors to get easements just because they can. And usually everybody just wants money. They'll say different things, but usually people just want to get paid. Busy roads. If you're wanting to spec build, especially if you want to survive challenging markets that are not like 2021, late 2020, and beginning of 2022, you have to consider location of land. And busy roads, when there's supply in the market and you just built a fantastic, beautiful house and they have 7 houses to choose from, yours is going to be the last one to sell. Yes, you got that land for $50,000 cheaper, but when you're talking about selling a $1.5 million house, you might sell it for $200,000 less. Location, supply and demand, areas where there's lots of land and it's all over the place. When a market shifts, they're the first ones to suffer. If you're out in rural Auburn, if you're out in Meadow Vista or Winchester, or out, Grass Valley, where land is just abundant as can be, that's the places where supply and demand is going to impact you most. You're in places where supply is a little limited. Maybe you're in East Sacramento or Land Park, or there's just not a lot of vacant land, comparatively speaking. You're maybe in a place where there's not a lot of new homes that are coming up. Those places are going to be a little bit less impacted. So consider those things. Yeah, the land is cheap out there. There's a reason why it's cheap out there, supply and demand. When the market's really hot, it doesn't matter. Everybody's buying something. But as soon as it slows down or becomes an even or balanced market, that will impact topography. If I had a nickel for every time somebody told me a lot was flat, that's topography. I'd be a very, very wealthy man. This is one of the biggest mistakes people make. They don't realize how expensive it is to build and how undesirable of a product you get when you build on a lot that's got a 30-degree slope. There's 2 issues with this, and I'll come back to it. Number 1, it's almost impossible, unless you spend a small fortune, to build a single-story house on a highly sloped lot. Number 2, you don't have usable space. And 3, because of the single story, you eliminate a big portion of the market, because it doesn't matter if somebody is 52 years old and can run upstairs, up and down. Everybody's thinking they're buying their forever home. And they're thinking about themselves when they're 78. And they don't want to run up and down stairs at 78 years old. They want to make sure the house is easy to access, comfortable. So topography is super important. Plus your construction costs go up. I can't even explain to you how they go up, but I'm just going to tell you, you're gonna spend probably 30% more building a house on a slope than you would on a flat lot. The time goes down. So if you're financing, your finance costs go up. All of the construction aspects go up. From your grading is increased, your retaining walls foundation, your framing, your stucco, I mean, the list keeps going on and on. Permits and fees, they vary a lot. Find out. There's no consistency. You can pay $30,000 for a set of permits and school fees in Citrus Heights, and you can pay $110,000 for the same set of permits and fees in the city of West Sacramento, or not too far from that in the city of Lincoln. So they vary drastically from place to place. Do your research, find out what the school fees are, what different impact fees are. Some places have lower permit fees, really high school fees. Some are the other way around. But those are things to consider in the impact. And then your real estate agent. A lot of people don't understand land. And so what they say is just like, hey, I mean, it's hard. Land has nuances. It's the most nuanced thing because there's all these factors to consider. So having someone who's done and dealt with a few real estate transactions with land help a lot. Someone who will slow things down. So who will make sure that you check all the boxes. I've had multiple situations, and I'm not a really pushy person, where I've tried to talk somebody out of buying a parcel and they still bought it. And they didn't have all their easements in place, or they didn't have stuff recorded, they just had stuff in the contract. And then all of us know what happens, right? You can have any agreement in the world, but enforcing it is super hard. So take your time buying land. Make sure you do your research before you buy their parcel. I've done multiple times where I've done research, poured money in, and realized that this lot's not gonna work. But I'm not gonna take and pour, good money after bad money. I'm gonna stop, I did my research, I know what's there. Remember, we're not gonna run out of land anytime soon. I move on to the next lot. Okay, design and budget. Number one, when we get to designing a house, do not overbuild. Look around at what other people are building, and I would say build slightly below what is the average in the area. So don't try to build the biggest, nicest, fanciest house. A lot of us, we're great like designers and we're creators, and it's part of who we are as human beings. But just remember that if you want to be economically viable, you have to kind of find the medium where you're not the nicest, the fanciest, the best house, because what you see as nice, as best, and fanciest might not be evaluated and valued the same way by people who are potentially looking to buy this home. Single story is always the best value. Everybody's looking for a single story house. So if you're just building 2-story houses, you're eliminating a certain segment of the market. Can it work building 2-story houses? Yes. Some areas you have to. Like if you're building in Midtown, you've got to build multi-story buildings. There's not much land. Your footprint, some of the lots I'm subdividing are like 1,900 square feet, right? I'm going to build a multi-story house. But in a lot of the areas, suburban areas, rural areas, if you can build a single-story house, that's just my piece of advice for you. It's what the market demands. It's the one leg up you have on tract home builders who are building 3,800 square foot multi-story homes. They're not building a lot of 3,800 square foot single story homes. If they are, they're selling them for a very high premium. The second thing, whatever you're building, if you're building for yourself, maybe you're considering, remember this is most likely not your forever home. So you're like, I'm gonna build this house, maybe this will be mine, and you overthink everything. Even if you're building a house, it's a spec house, just keep this in mind. Everybody is thinking it's their forever home. I had a real estate agent friend of mine tell me an anecdote. He was shopping for a couple who was in the early 70s, and they're like, this is gonna be our forever home, okay? They've bought 3 homes since then over the last 6 years. So if you're building a home and thinking about building it for yourself, kind of have that mentality. Not everything's gonna be perfect. Don't stock away all your savings and all your finances in there. Lead your design with your budget. Kind of find out what you've got for land, what you can finance, and then work your way backwards. find out what you're starting with, maybe be a little bit conservative, give yourself 10% for margin for things unexpected, things that come up, things that you don't estimate, and then get an approximate per square foot cost from a contractor of what you're thinking to build. And don't try to find the cheapest contractor or someone who doesn't really do good accounting, because they'll throw out some number for 2017. And you just can't build a house for 2017 just because you can't find them for the same price. So work with that, work with your budget, make sure you don't make those mistakes, and then work with a designer that understands your budget. So a lot of us, I just had a conversation with a gentleman. He bought a house from me a while ago. He actually was my neighbor for some time and moved out, bought another lot. And he bought a lot in a really nice community, spent a small fortune on it, and went to design with a designer in town on their architectural plans. And so he's like, we told him our budget, and then we told him what we wanted. And the next question was like, did you meet with him with your wife? And he said yes. And so they listed out everything they want, and they got this massive house that would cost like $4 million to build. Over like 10,000 square feet under the roof. Just an insane home. And they just, I don't know how much they spent on their design, but I'm assuming for the architectural set of plans, probably $40,000-$50,000 into it. And I don't think they even have like a submittable set. They just have like a preliminary HOA type of set. And that's where they're at. So just work with someone and work backwards. Make sure there's got to be a soft landing spot between what you're looking to put in the house and what you can afford. In the design process, here's where you start. Start identifying where your utilities are. It's going to dictate a really important thing. Number one, if you don't know where your utilities are, you probably already made a mistake before you start in design, but find out where are your utilities. That will dictate heavily. Like if you're out in the country, you may want to put your house somewhere, but if that's where your well is, you're not putting your house there unless you want to go drill a well in another place, if you can. If that's where your septic tank's going to go or your repair leach field, you can't place your house there. The other thing, topography map. So help dictate where you can place your map. This is before you really start designing the house. You have to have this down. If you're going to do it in another way, you're going to be redoing your plans. It's going to get expensive because you're going to realize that some of these things are going to impact your design. With all of that, utility location, you could probably add easements to this. Where are your easements? What are your setbacks? Size and location of the house is the other one. You go back to that budget, you figure out what we can afford. And then with all this in mind, where am I going to place my house? Bedrooms, bathroom, garage count. Have an idea what you're looking for. Just in generally speaking, if you're doing spec, don't build 3-bedroom houses unless they're small. People like extra bedrooms, even if they don't use them. It's an office. Like 3 bedrooms, not a good idea. Even if you're 2,000 square feet, build a 4-2 home, not a 3-3 home. It's what the market wants and demands. Kind of look around what you got around you, right? For your garage count. The expectation in that area is a 3-car garage. Try to squeeze a 3-car garage in if you can. If it doesn't matter, everybody's got 2-car garages, they'll be fine. Unless you want to stand out, but make sure you don't overdo it. You might sell your house faster if you have a bunch of extra garage space, but you might not be the best economical decision. Architectural style, look around. Drive up and down the street and make sure your house fits in. Have an idea. A lot of us have this, we don't have an idea. Go open the plethora of apps out there that show architectural houses. You're obviously not going to build a $6 million house, if you're building it in Orangevale, but just the general idea. There should be a certain consistency to your architectural style. It's going to really help working with the designer. The designer knows what you're trying to look for. And again, don't give the designer 4 different architectural styles and say, I like all of them. He'll probably answer you and say, I like all of them too. But if I combine all of them, I'm creating a small monster that's gonna be hideous. And so have those things in mind. And then lay out a floor plan. What kind of, do you want a traditional floor plan with a separate dining room? Do you want an open concept? Do you want some hybrid of the two? Those are things to think about and consider when you're designing. Open concept's been a big deal, but I feel like there's a little bit more room for traditional floor plans these days than before. These things are cyclical and they move around, what people prefer and desire. Same with styles inside and architectural. By the way, if you're building for spec, don't try to be the trendiest house. Try to be timeless. Try to be neutral with a lot of your colors. You can do a few things that are interesting, but don't make your entire house interesting, because somebody's gonna love it, but somebody's gonna hate it. And so make sure you're building a house that a lot of people can like, or maybe the best way to say it is nobody will hate. Construction process. And here's number one, unless you do this professionally or want to do it professionally, hire a competent contractor. Especially if you're building for yourself. Shop around, look around. It's a pretty intense process, and unless you plan to keep doing this repetitively, I wouldn't one-off and unless you're just bored and you've got nothing else to do and you want a learning or life experience. Two, think about it in two ways. One, a fixed price contract where you've got everything defined, you got your finishes selected, you got your allowances selected, and you're working from there. Typically, this is going to be more expensive because the contractor takes all the risk. Or a cost plus contract, which is going to typically be more advantageous for you, but it's going to be dictated kind of based on what you want, because a contractor doesn't take the risk. The lumber is going to go up in 3 months. I don't know. Massive storm that takes out 3 million trees in Canada and lumber doubles in price, or Trump comes with a new tariff. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's those things that make stuff go up and change prices. So think about these things when you are selecting or negotiating with a contractor. And then just kind of another one is like fee-based project management, where you get a contractor who's going to manage the project with you, depending on what you define as the scope. But I think these are always better than you doing it yourself, unless you plan to start doing this professionally. I'll tell you why. The contractor's costs are always going to be cheaper than yours. I don't care how good of a negotiator you think you are. If the contractor has been building for years and how much volume he's in, he's just going to get better quotes. May he get better quotes on every single trade than you? No. You might find one guy who's going to be cheaper, or two guys going to be cheaper. But big picture, doing this for a long time, knows exactly what a foundation should cost, what a framing job should cost, where the best material supply is. And usually, a good fee-based project manager will actually be free. When you pay him, he will save you all that money. There's a lot of mistakes that he will prevent you from redoing. You're going to be building your house. You're going to have, when I got into the industry, this is what I heard all the time. Hey, I've got a good idea. So this contractor's trying to figure out how to save money, and they see that I'm inexperienced, and so they've always got a bunch of good ideas that save them money and will cause me a headache later. So here's 3 variables that you consider: time, cost, and quality when you're working with a contractor. It's kind of like, I don't know if you guys have seen this meme out there, but it's a meme about the household. It's happy wife, happy kids, clean house, right? Choose 2, right? So it's same here, choose 2. You're not going to have all of these when you're hiring a contractor. And if you think that you're going to find somebody who's going to give you all 3, let me know, I'll use them too. And then remember, at the end of the day, it's really 2 variables, because time equals money. And if you're any good at math, you'll realize that if you can make $50,000 more on a project, but that project, right, takes you a year. So, for example, instead of $100,000, you made $150,000, but it took you a year. But you did 2 projects with that same amount of money, and they took you 6 months, right? You made 200 grand instead of 150. So time is always going to be money, and a lot of people don't consider that. They don't value their time. That's absolutely fantastic, but I think it's important not to lie to ourselves that these two things really mean the same thing. And then reputation and trust. You want to work with people who are not going to drop you halfway along your journey. You want to work with people who, you have ethics and morality, and you don't always have to wonder if they're doing some sort of side hustle on the side or being devious about something with you. So those are the things that you're going to want to consider. And the last one, which I think is understated but really important, is personality fit. Some of us work well together, some of us don't. So work with somebody that you enjoy working with. Somebody who has a personality that you enjoy, someone who communicates in a way that you understand, and who understands the way you communicate. So those are the things that I think are super important. With that, if I can do it, you can do it. That's literally the mentality I took when I jumped into business. I think anybody can do it. Honestly, a lot of this stuff, guys, it's not about some crazy ideas or intelligence that's through the roof. A lot of this is doing something well, consistently, learning along the way, and just like waking up, brushing your teeth, putting your shoes on in the morning, and going to work. And if you do this consistently, you're going to have results. If you're going to have a bunch of starts and stops and get discouraged and frustrated, it's going to be a hard process. It's going to be, one step forward, two steps back. Any questions?
Is it better to build an HOA or non-HOA?
It depends. The HOA is definitely going to make things more complicated. You're going to have to read their rules, follow them, communicate with them, be responsive. The HOA is simpler in the sense of usually HOA communities have the utilities all ready for you. Usually, you're going to have limitations in building. I'd still look at the allowable building envelope, all these other things, but usually the buildability of the lot is guaranteed, more or less. It might be limited, but it's usually guaranteed. But dealing with the HOA, your plan process is going to take longer because you need the HOA to approve, and then you need the jurisdiction to approve, city, county, etc. But that's the things. Yep.
Sure, so when you looking at land and utilities, now you said you were in contract because there's a lot of, utilities, so do you put some sort of disclaimer in there or an out in your contract, well, if these utilities don't check out?
Well, you have contingencies, and I wouldn't release any of those contingencies. I'd keep asking questions, so you're not trying to hide anything from the person you're buying. Most of the people selling land have no clue what they're selling. Okay, so they don't know all the variables. So, and if you don't ask the questions and make them aware, then they will think that you're being kind of weird or squirrely, but you got to check this out. And so within the last 18 months, I have walked away from a lot in Placer County that can't get water. Neighbors are having issues. I tried on my own with the help of the seller, couldn't get it, and one that couldn't perk. Actually, two that couldn't perk, and one that I had to tap a sewer in. That's all within the last 18 months, just different situations, just don't make sense.
So if you're in contract and the seller doesn't know, are you willing to place that money, spend the money to get a perk test? What's your normal?
It depends on the situation. Because of volume, for me, spending $1,800 on a perk test is not a big deal. But I wouldn't drill a well for them. I'd make them take the risk of a well's expensive, especially if you're going to go deep. So I'm not going to take on that amount of risk. And why do I say that? Because I've taken on half the cost of a well before I walked away from it.
Experience.
At what point do you start paying the impact fees? I'm still trying to figure out where to place the house on my lot, and I keep putting it somewhere, and then something will be impacted by a different department, whether it was the sewer tap, or where we could drop the line from the electrical pole, or Hammerhead Drive, because it seems like every time I go to the next person, something else comes up. And that
Welcome to Sac County.
How do you best navigate that part of the process when each department is putting on another layer and another layer and another, and I would change where I wouldn't put it at the bottom, I'd put it up if there's hard pan up here and I can't get to flat ground with my topo, and it's getting complicated.
Yeah, so number one, I wouldn't pay any impact fees. I wouldn't pay any fees until you're ready to pull the permit. So many people.
I'm in the permit.
Okay.
I'm in that. I've got 4 conditions left, and they're the most expensive conditions so far.
Okay, well.
It's the road, the fire road.
So I don't know if I'm understanding you correctly, but I'll try to answer the best I can. So just in general, for all of you out there, you're gonna get fees generated during the plan check process. Don't pay them until you're ready to pull a permit. Unless they're an actual plan check fee, where you need to pay it to check the plans, because who knows what's gonna happen between now and there. And at the worst case, you're, borrowing the city or county money for 3-6 months for them to hold on to. But so I wouldn't do that unless it's mandatory. And if you already have approval and then you need to pay these impact fees, then I guess the question is, when do you want to start your project? Because you're gonna have impact fees regardless. Once you need to start construction, like at some point you're gonna have to, if you don't have a water permit, meter, you're gonna have to pay for the water meter. In order to start construction, you're gonna have to pay for your school fees, things like that. So at that point, you can pay when you're ready to build. If you're not ready to build, hold off. There's no need to just pay and prepay them, because a lot of things can happen to you in your life, whatever else. Any other questions?
So we're doing a lot split right now, and there's already an existing easement between the property and the neighboring property. Is it possible for county to require you to change that easement over? Or is that easement that's existing, does that stay?
Well, that easement, unless it's abandoned by you and the other parties, remains. Unless by agreement. Oftentimes, if you're doing a lot split, you may need the easement in a different location. So part of your agreement might be to abandon that existing easement and create a new one. That may happen.
Okay.
But you don't have to abandon that easement unless there's kind of an agreement to abandon it by you or whoever else owns that easement.
So there's like a little turn in the easement where the driveway would be, and they're just saying it would be a safety concern, and they want to make it straight. Is that something?
Well, that's part of their designs. I'm wondering if it's if this is like a fire requirement.
No, it's DOT.
Okay.
They just made a comment. Initially, they said it's okay, and then during the planning review committee, they pretty much said that it need to.
Is your road just designed with a really sharp turn there, or what?
It's not necessarily sharp. They're just saying because it comes out to a main road, they want it to be straight.
Straight. That's probably a line of sight thing,
Yeah.
my guess. And you're probably gonna have to do some re-recording, because it's not the easement that drives it, it's the road that drives it.
Yeah.
So you might need to adjust the parameters of that easement.
Got it, okay.
Do you see that building requirements getting more stricter because of potential disasters instead of
I think things are. Come again? Repeat the question.
Do you?
Yeah. She's asking if things are getting stricter because of natural disasters.
Like fires?
And yeah, I think there's 2 things that are going on. One, the plan process is becoming incredibly complicated. So I run into guys that submitted plans in 2000 and it was like 2 or 3 sheets, right? When we started, I think our plan sets were 8 or 9 sheets back in like 2013, 2014. Now we're, cutting down small forests. It's getting more complicated. With that said, there's new requirements that's coming around. Like for example, in El Dorado County, they have a bunch of requirements regarding setbacks. Now, in old communities, you can get exemptions for them, but side setbacks to the houses are changing. Those are like new requirements that came around. I wouldn't say that there's anything like super specifically code-wise that changing massively, but your insurance rates are driving things. So I recently heard anecdotally somebody that I know that redesigned their house from like a wood stick frame house to an aluminum frame to lower their their insurance bill and their insurance quote, because they're building out in the country, in the forest. So things like that are happening more so than insurance is driving stuff. El Dorado County is the only one that I'm aware of that's like more specific on fire. That's kind of in short.
You're the professional. As a beginner, as an amateur, maybe, what would be a good time frame for a house, like a regular one-story house, to build from buying the land to turnkey point?
For yourself or for spec?
For spec, yeah.
For spec, I think a good time to build a house, this is your first house, if you're hiring a project manager, if it's single story, there's no like caveats and complications, 6-8 months at most should be a reasonable time to build a house. If it's like 2,500 square feet, single story house. Yeah. You can do it faster than that, but the chances, of you doing that, especially in the beginning, are not going to be high.
That's including like all the processing.
No, not the design. We're talking about just the construction.
No, I'm talking from buying.
From design, it depends where. Your design and approval process could be anywhere from 2 to 3 months all the way to 12, 18 months.
I'm talking about, time is money.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, every area is incredibly different. Incredibly different. Like, it's hard for me to answer that question. That's why all the questions and research are super important. Any other questions? I wanted to highlight a guy who actually works on this stuff day to day. Vadim, if you can stand up. He's my partner. He would help you with a lot more specific project, especially if you have design related questions. I would ask him. He works in this kind of day to day. I'm a little bit slightly removed from like day to day design operations, but he knows the stuff. He deals with the issues, all the different kind of stuff. So that's a little bit here. Thank you guys.
All right, thank you so much. It was very interesting. You guys can reach out to them after the event directly, or get their contact information. If we talk about construction, it can take a whole decade, right? All right, so I'm just gonna connect for the next speaker. Dan, you can come up here. He'll be talking about how to get a construction loan, because sometimes people don't have $500,000 in their pocket, right? So let me connect it.
Hi, I'm Dan Klavinsky with Lone City Mortgage, and we're a local brokerage with multiple different lenders. And today I'm going to talk about one of our lenders and their construction product and kind of the steps that you go through during the construction and obtaining a loan. And we'll discuss each one of these individually. So the first step would be to qualify and figure out where your financing is, what your limitations, options are, what you would be looking at as far as the payment. Make sure it's something that you're going to be comfortable with, make sure it's something you qualify for. After that, you would want to start the design on your process and what plot of land you would want to use. As far as doing the actual loan, you can either own the land and do a construction loan on that, or you can purchase the land and do the construction loan all together at the same time. And the next step would be to hire a builder or a contractor. So once you have a general idea of what you're looking for in your dream home, you'd find a local builder, contractor, discuss the details, all of the specifics, and once you decide on the builder that you want to use, then all of the information would get sent to the lender for the builder's approval. And the lender would take a look at the builder, their construction history, their references, background, making sure they have enough insurance, and all of the licensing for a smooth building process. The next step would be to get the builder approved. So the builder would fill out a form provide all of the documents to the lender, and the lender would review everything, make sure they're qualified, and once they're ready to issue the approval, at that point in time is when you would pay $150 to get the approval from them. And the approval process can be started before you actually have the property, but it has to be done before everything's cleared for closing. The next step would be the project approval and underwriting. So once the builder approved, there would be some documents that the builder would have to provide to the lender. The builder, or you as the buyer, would have to pay a $300 project review fee. Provide the signed contractor, signed by you, by the builder. Cost breakdown, construction budget, and one full set of approved construction plans and specifications, including elevations. There would be an appraisal that would be done on the property based on the budget, based on the plans, based on the specifications. Building permits, you only have to provide those if you started the process before closing. If you didn't, then you don't have to worry about that. And any information about any prepaid items for the construction prior to closing, and whether it's already factored in the budget or not. And the last step would be the draw at close. So once the loan disbursement requests, all of the hard costs for the construction would be dispersed. The next step would be the closing process. Once the title on the property has been recorded, the initial draw would be sent to the builder. The construction begins, and the buyer would receive the paperwork, information on all of the next steps, the schedule, and what to expect for the upcoming months. The buyer will work with the lender, which will handle all of the steps throughout the construction process, making sure that everything's on pace, everyone's on track, and everything gets done in a timely manner. Now, as far as the construction process, the lender will oversee the entire process, reviewing all aspects of building as far as managing timeframes, licensing, title documents, insurance, inspections, dispersing of funds, and mechanical liens waivers. There's also going to be a modification period. So once the home is built, the final inspection is done, the buyer will sign the final loan documents, authorizing the final construction draw to cover any of the outstanding costs. Any of the unused funds will be applied towards the loan and for the remainder of the term. Throughout the construction period, which they're shooting for 12 months, right around there. It's an interest-only payment for the construction loan, and afterwards it would be fully amortized principal and interest payment. And once the title policy is finalized, the buyer ends up getting their house and moving in. Now, as far as qualifications, the requirements for this, you would need to have at least a 700 credit score. 5% down payment if it's a primary residence between 1 and 4 units, 10% if it's a second home. And construction would have to be completed within 12 months. That's what the lender and their project manager basically shoot for. If it goes past the 12 months, you would have to requalify for the loan, meaning providing all of your financials, check your credits, your assets, and make sure nothing's changed. Right now, the maximum loan amount is just over 766,000 for a single-family residence. And we're coming up within a couple of months. We'll have updated loan limits, so that number is anticipated to come up to somewhere probably around 800,000. If you wanted to avoid private mortgage insurance, you would put 20% down for down payment, but you need at least 5% as a primary residence, 10% as a second home. And this can be structured as a purchase or refinance. If you're structuring it as a purchase, essentially you're buying the land and you're going to do the construction loan all in one shot. If it's a refinance, you already own the land and you're looking to build on it. And questions? Kind of went through it pretty quick.
To have the presentation sent.
Uh,
Via email.
sure.
I can share it to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alrighty, thank you so much. Alrighty, we do have their business cards here, so if you ever do need any questions about getting like a loan from construction or even a house, you can reach out to Dan directly. But we're gonna have Scappy coming up to speak about their cabinet company. Alright, here you go.
So,
No presentation.
no presentation. Yeah, I know. So, good morning, everyone. We don't have a presentation for today, but our best presentation is our works, previous works. You can check it on our website. Scapi and our sister company is Modenala. So, my name is Vlad, and I represent the Scapi today. Local company who makes the kitchen cabinets, bathroom vanities, closets, and actually any frameless cabinets. We make this, we've been serving this community around 5 years for now, and we're trying to provide stylish and functional designs for builders like you. So, as we know, as kitchen is the heart of any home. At Scapi, we believe quality and design can make a big difference in every project, whether it's a multi-family unit or it's luxury home. We are here to help create impressive kitchen for your project and your clients. Why choose the Scapi? Here's a few reasons. First, it's a short lead time and quick response. We know how important to stay on the schedule, and so our lead time around 3-5 weeks from the getting materials to the warehouse. So in the market, I don't know somebody who can make the custom cabinets from the scratch by the 3-5 weeks. Top quality of materials. We can use the best European materials. Some of our vendors, it's world-known companies, like you can see on our booklets, and it's so famous companies. And always use the high quality hardware for our kitchens and our cabinets, because like we think it's good cabinet, it's not a place for some cheap hardware which can lost like in 1 year or something like that. Best choose it's some cabinets what can work 5, 10, 20 years. In Tailor solution, we offer products with the fit both multifamily units and also the custom high-end home. A wide range of our products. It includes laminated panels, painted fronts, wall panels, lighting, veneers, stained wood fronts, and smart ergonomic hardware, providing modern, elegant, and practical solution for every project. Also, we provided a good warranty for our work in our manufacture. What we done by our hands, it's like 2 years for our work, but a lot of our like sub companies who give us panels, hardware, and etc. give lifetime warranty or like warranty for 18,000 or 20,000 cycles of the opening or something like that. Builder support. We understand the challenges builders face, and we are here to make your project smoother and more successful. So I'd also like to introduce our sister company, Modernalo. They are leaders in large format porcelain made in Italy. They work with laminum and top Italian brand. If you need the best porcelain for a high-end project, Modernalo is unmatched. At Scapi and Modernalo, we are committed to give your best craftsmanship and material. Together we can create spaces to exceed your clients' expectations. Thank you for your time, and I hope we speak today later.
So much. They did pass out some brochures, so you guys can take it home, reach out directly as well to them. To finish off this business networking breakfast, broker Stefan Scott will finish up already.
Okay, thank you for coming. Number one, you see, we have search here. If you need to build, plan anything, ask search. If you need money, ask these guys. If you need kitchen, you ask these guys too. Everything here. If you need real estate attorney, we have Sakina Svetlana here. Can you just introduce you? If any problem in transaction, any cloud on title, Svetlana is here. Okay? And what else? If insurance here, we have Slobodyan here, our partners, and Sergey, Volkov, Oleg. Where is Oleg? Can you just see where he looks really good? If you need a pool, build pool, looks pool, Roman here, he very shy, you know, his head looks pool. You know, if you need to build pool, we have good people here, they can build pool. Okay, you see, this is average price per square feet for last, it says 14 years. See what's Sacramento, growing. If you want to build house, hurry up. Everything is going up, you know. And this average price per square feet for last, this is take from MLS, for last 14 years. It's every year up. You know. And yeah, you see only 2% in Sacramento new construction still. You have really good gap. Yeah, to build new house for it. It's not much new houses still, you know, market. Okay, we real estate agency here. If you know, if you want to get real estate license, we are here to help you. If you have your friends, kids, they want to get license, we have school here. Welcome to real estate business. If you here agents in Sacramento, we are here to help you to be successful, grow up. If you need land, call us. Our team work hard to find good land for you, you know. If you need some fixer, anything, you know, flip property, we are here to help you. We have 48 agents right now. It's Agnesa here, you know, she controls everything, even me. It's really a good team here. Okay, guys, thank you for coming. Yeah, we still have food, coffee, we have good fellowship here. Have a good day. Life is good. Market is okay. God is good all the time.